Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. And, we're going to break down the pound for pound list. And, we're going to give the IBFP's pound for pound list. And we're also going to kind of go over all of our subscribers' pound for pound list that these guys have listed and ranked. And we're just going to break it down and be unbiased about it. But first off, before I start the pound for pound list, some people have heavyweights on their pound for pound list. Some people don't. And I understand that wasn't the, actual intention of a pound for pound list when people first started doing pound for pound lists. But at this point, it's become a common theme putting heavyweights in the pound for pound list. My pound for pound list has heavyweights. ESPN's pound for pound list has heavyweights, and so on and so forth. So let's just keep going and break it down. And there's no right or wrong with the pound for pound list. It's all subjective. Some people have stringent criteria, some people don't. So let's just break it down and go through the pound for pound list and what everyone's saying. Now, on my pound for pound list, the first person that I have listed on top at number one is Saul Canelo Alvarez. I believe, he has one of the best resumes in boxing, especially at his young age. He's in his prime. He's an elite level fighter, and he just beat an elite level fighter in Danny Jacobs, which was a clear victory, and there was absolutely no controversy. So if you look at it like that, Canelo Alvarez has done an amazing job of overcoming Danny Jacobs' height and reach advantage, because those were factors in the fight. Danny Jacobs came overweight past the the rehydration clause, and Canelo Alvarez still had no issues dealing with Danny Jacobs. So it was a tremendous accomplishment for Canelo Alvarez. He unified another belt. So with all of that being said, I have to put number one on the pound for pound list at this point to date. It's Saul Canelo Alvarez. I felt like he's just head and shoulders above everybody else at this point, until we get more unification fights such as Vasily Lomachenko versus Mikey Garcia, those type of fights, until we get Anthony Joshua versus Wilder or Fury, those type of fights, until you get Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence. We need these type of fights to determine who goes where on the pound for pound list. And as you know, pound for pound is always subjective. So then number two, I have Terence Bud Crawford. I feel like he's just done so much. It's always, for me, has been a huge toggle between Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, because these two are some of the best fighters in boxing. These guys have great resumes. Terence Crawford was undisputed. So it's very difficult to put one above the other, but I feel like Canelo Alvarez at this point is edging it out over Terence Bud Crawford. We need a bigger win from Terence Crawford at this point, another unification. And since these PBC fighters are going to continue to duck him, continue to avoid him, it's going to be extremely difficult for him to do so. As of right now, Saul Canelo Alvarez has that top spot. Terence Crawford coming in at number two. Vasily Lomachenko is coming in at number three. He's an elite level fighter, multiple division world champion. His skill set is pretty much not comparable with pretty much anyone in boxing at this point. Vasily Lomachenko gets the credit at number three. Anthony Joshua at number four. Alexander Usyk at number five. And then 6 through 10, it's pretty much in any order that you really want to rank these guys. So that's my top five: Canelo, Bud, Loma, AJ, Usyk. Number 6 through 10 is very, very subjective, but 6 through 10, I have Triple G, Anui, Francisco Estrada, Mikey Garcia, and Jarrett Swift Hurd. And so those are my 6 through 10 as well. So let's just keep it going and break down you guys' pound for pound list and see if it's anywhat comparable. So the first one we're going to get into is D. Jefferson. D. Jefferson states Terence Crawford or Canelo is either one or two. He said these guys can toggle back and forth. Vasily Lomachenko is number three, and he said 4 through 10 can come in any order, such as Alexander Usyk, Noya Anui, Anthony Joshua, Errol Spence, Tyson Fury, and Mikey Garcia. Now you may notice that I didn't include Errol Spence on my pound for pound list, and that's not because Errol Spence is not a good fighter. He is a good fighter. He's a talented fighter. He's a world champion. He's undefeated. He's all of those things. But to be a pound for pound fighter, in my eyes, in the eyes of the IBFP, I have to be honest and unbiased, is that you have to do something. You have to unify a title. If you don't unify a title in your division, you have to win a title in another division. You have to have a big name on your resume. And yes, Spence does have a big name on his resume, but it has to be at the right time. It can't be more of a cherry pick type of fight. And I understand that Mikey Garcia called out Errol Spence, but Errol Spence chose to accept that fight. He chose to accept that fight. We always have a choice. And at the end of the day, he went after Kell Brook when he was broken. when he was weight drained, coming off a knockout loss and an eye surgery. I cannot give him enough credit to the point for beating a small Mikey Garcia and a damaged Kell Brook to put him on the pound-for-pound list. I'm sorry. I feel like there's too many other elite level, top level fighters who've accomplished more, who've done more, who've had better competition in their weight classes, better fights, to give it to Errol Spence at this point. But he's a very good fighter, and he's just on the outside looking in. Should he beat Sean Porter, he can edge into the pound-for-pound top 10, because that would be a unification. It would be a certified welterweight, and it'd be a very good welterweight. So I will give him credit for that, and he could probably edge the top 10 depending on the other fighters in the top 10. No one falls out with a loss. But let's just keep it going. We also have Roger Hernandez, who has Saul Canelo Alvarez number 1, Terence Crawford number 2, Vasily Lomachenko number 3, Anthony Joshua number 4. And he also added a little tidbit to this and said, the PBC Fighters Fangirls Club would have Errol Spence 1, Wilder 2, Charlo 3. And so that's absolutely correct. That's a delusional list. Errol Spence, Wilder, and Charlo, none of those guys make the pound-for-pound list for me, because, looking at just pure accomplishments, looking at what these guys have done, it's just, to me, it just doesn't seem to be enough. Let's get into it more. Wasi Rahman, Wasi states Terence Crawford, Saul Canelo Alvarez, Vasily Lomachenko, Oslander Usyk, Leo Santa Cruz, Francisco Estrada, Tanaka, Hurd, Daniel Roman, and Alexander Gopsik. And so he said the number one rule is accomplishments. Accomplishments are a reflection of skill. Crawford has accomplished more than Canelo and Loma, 2 lineal champions and more active world champions than Loma, more weight classes and more titles held than Canelo. Any other fighter coming off a loss or devoid of a title cannot be on the list. Therefore, Triple G and Mikey are off of it. Usyk will come off of it if he vacated all the titles, the cruiserweight titles. He said beating a pound-for-pound fighter puts you on the list. Spence was not top 10, was number 10, for that reason, but unfortunately he got bumped off. Estrada jumped to 6th because of that too. Now, at the end of the day, I'm going to be honest and unbiased. I think that Wasi has a great criteria for his list, and he has all accomplished and top-level fighters. The only thing I don't agree with is the Spence part. I just didn't feel like he's done enough, because even though Mikey's a pound-for-pound fighter, you don't get credit for being a pound-for-pound fighter for fighting a guy moving up 2 weight classes. I'm sorry, you just don't get credit. I can't give anybody ultimate credit for that. And, if Mikey was a natural welterweight, if Mikey had been fighting at welterweight, if Mikey was a champion at welterweight, Errol Spence would have gotten ultimate credit for that. But I have to be picky with that. That's just how we have to keep it, unbiased. Ichiro Ata states Canelo Alvarez, Usyk, Loma, Crawford, AJ. That's a fantastic list. Ken Kong says, now this is very interesting. This is I guess a troll list is Al Heyman, Blue Blood, and all these other biased channels. Well, let's keep it going. Hey Mama states Canelo's 1, Usyk's 2, Bud's 3, Loma's 4, AJ's 5, Estrada 6, Anui 7, Leo Santa Cruz 8, Errol Spence 9, and Mikey Smith Thurman all about 10. Interesting list. C188 has Canelo Alvarez 1, Usyk 2, Loma 3, Crawford 4, Triple G 5, Estrada 6, Anui 7, Joshua 8, Rungvisai 9, and Garcia 10. So that's an interesting list as well. Let's keep it going. And we also have Ricardo Lopez, and who has his top 5. He has Terence Crawford at 1, Canelo 2, Usyk 3, Lomachenko 4, Estrada 5. So therefore, sometimes you'll see Anthony Joshua missing from some lists, and it's because some guys just don't rate heavyweights in the pound for pound. It is very subjective. Now, in this pound for pound top 5, if you look at it, I have no problem with people toggling Canelo and Crawford. I just feel like Canelo's done a little more at this point. But that's just my feeling of it, being in the higher level of competition. Since these guys' accomplishments are so close, his resume is so good, it's hard for me to put anybody over Canelo at number 1. Lomachenko has to be top 5. Canelo, Crawford, all top 5. Estrada, depending on how great you thought his win was, he could easily be top 5. Estrada's a very, very talented fighter and put on a hell of a performance. I have him top 10. He could be about number 6, number 7 for me, somewhere in there, but he's a top fighter. Boxing 8 has Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez, Usyk, Loma, AJ. JB, one of the smartest men in boxing, has Terence Crawford, Canelo Alvarez, Vasily Lomachenko, Slander Usyk, and Spence at 5. Even though we disagree on Spence, I respect JB's boxing knowledge because he's very knowledgeable about these guys. But I definitely disagree with Spence being at number 5. If he is on your list, he should be much lower, and that's just my opinion, but I respect your list, JB. Alex Garcia has Terence Crawford 1, Canelo 2, Lomachenko 3, Usyk 4, AJ 5, Spence 6, Inouye 7, Mikey 8, Triple G 9, and Callum Smith 10. And that's very interesting that he has Callum Smith listed. A Canelo Alvarez potential opponent. Callum Smith is a very good fighter, a long fighter, talented fighter, won the World Boxing Super Series, is an undefeated world champion. He is a problem. They have a common opponent in Rocky Fielding, and they both defeated Rocky Fielding by knockout. So you can give these guys much respect for that. Jose Yepes basically states he has Canelo and Crawford at the top. Usyk, he's at Pacquiao out of respect. Loma, Estrada, and he said that for heavyweights are allowed, he has AJ, then Wilder. But that's pretty good. Alex Becerra says Canelo, Terence Crawford, Loma, Spence, Joshua. These are his top 5s. So it looks like the top 5s are all crowded at the top with Canelo Alvarez, Terence Crawford, Anthony Joshua. TKO Sports, shout out to TKO Sports, has Loma, Canelo, Crawford, Usyk, AJ. Jessica Cardenas has Canelo, Usyk, Crawford, AJ, and Loma top 5. She put Loma 5, basically stating her reasoning was behind it was because he didn't, I guess because he lost Orlando Salido. Adrian Gonzalez has Canelo pound for pound number 1 as the king. Let's keep it going, see if anyone else has any differences in their pound for pound list, because what we like to look and see if there's anybody that's saying anything different than what we have. Soldier for God has Canelo 1, Crawford 2, Usyk 3, AJ 4, Mikey 5. So I think Mikey Garcia can still be a pound for pound fighter, but much lower, because taking that type of loss to Errol Spence where you just weren't competitive boxing wise, it's hard for me to keep Mikey in the top 5, and I just don't think he's done enough at that point. Mikey's dropped to the bottom of the top 10 pound for pound, so he's still a pound for pound fighter, just at the bottom in my opinion. But once again, this concludes the pound for pound listing with the IBFP. Please share, like, and you must absolutely subscribe.